Trial Lawyers University, where the Titans come to train. Produced and powered by LawPods.
Well, we got my old and good friend Jason Waechter with us here today, all the way from Southfield, Michigan. Jason and I go all the way back to high school at Brother Rice in Michigan, and Jason's still there today, freezing his ass off. Every time I go back there, I look around and I see my friends. I'm like, who's crazy enough to live in this shitty, frizzy weather and rain and clouds and overcast most of the year? But then I see my friend Jason, and he's still smiling, even in spite of the cold weather. So, Jason, how are you able to manage such an upbeat spirit in the depths of a Michigan winter?
Lots of trips. I travel an awful lot. It's 27 degrees here today, so you're right on.
I know you do travel a lot. Where'd you just come back from?
We were in Australia, and I'm going to Thailand in 2 months. So I believe in you got to put it on the calendar and take the trips now while you can walk up the mountain and have that good health. Otherwise, you'll never get around to it.
Right. That is a good plan, because like health-wise too, because you're like Mr. Jiu-Jitsu, aren't you? I mean, every time you people that do jiu-jitsu, you and my friend Kyle Sherman and a couple other friends that do jiu-jitsu are like crazy about it. So what is it about jiu-jitsu that just gets you so fired up?
It's hard. It's physical. It's great physical exercise. And it's like a chess game. You're always thinking one step ahead. And when you can beat up I'm 57, if he can beat up a 25-year-old stud who's, still in great shape because he got good technique, that's a good day.
Let's see. It's kind of like trial, very strategic, like three-dimensional chess. And sometimes, technique does matter. You got to practice your technique. Got to practice your jiu-jitsu.
What a great segue. And you know what? Before we move on, there's been many a conversation I start at TLU events with, I went to high school at Dan Ambrose, and usually it gets a lot of follow-up questions.
See that? They're like, was he cool back then as he is today? And did he have a TLU t-shirt on back then? That's right. Yeah. Because like people, but anyways, yes, those were the days back there at Brother Rice. I can't say I have fond memories of high school because I got picked on a lot, but that's okay. I used to be kind of overweight, and these things happen, and life happens. And you learn to get a thick skin from a little bit of abuse in high school, especially in all boys high school like that one, but that's all right. But speaking of high school, we got through high school, and then we went to college at some small college, I think, in Michigan, but then eventually got to law school. So tell us about that impetus, or where you first got the desire to become a lawyer.
I think I was brainwashed when I was a child. My father went to law school, but he never practiced law. And he always would say, a law school education's the absolute best education you can have, no matter what you end up doing. If you go work for General Motors, they're going to put you above everybody else, and the law is everywhere. So you will always be able to use that law school education no matter what you do. I was doing an internship at Albion College in New York, and I learned in that internship something great. I don't want to do this, which was advertising. So I signed up for Stanley Kaplan in New York and took the LSAT at New York University and ended up being accepted at Detroit School of Law, U of D.
U of D, yeah, man. That's Detroit College of Law, but you went to the other one. The other private school that was low rated, like DCL. That's okay though, buddy, because it's only law school. It doesn't really matter. It wasn't fancy like Michigan or Wayne State.
No,
it was the bottom tier law schools. It's okay, Jason. Nobody ever said you were an intellectual, so it's okay. Neither am I. It's all right. It's cool. So, anyways, you go to law school. Did you participate in anything in law school, like mock trial, moot court trial, anything like that kind of gave you maybe a little bit of a head start into being a trial lawyer?
Yeah, that's what I thought being a lawyer was. It was going to court. So I took trial advocacy, and there was a program that was in the local prosecutor's office, the Wayne County prosecutor's office, and I was an intern there for a summer. So one great thing about that internship is, we did our work in the morning, and then they let us go watch trials, and they would say, go to this courtroom. There's a great lawyer in there. So I learned a lot about trying cases by watching trials. And, you become a lawyer, you don't have time to go sit in a courtroom for 4 hours to watch somebody do an opening statement or a closing argument. So that was a really great experience.
Well, when you're a young lawyer, you generally do have time, especially if you're self-employed, because you don't have that much work. But, but I'm just saying. I remember those days of being a young lawyer, going to watch a lot of trials. But so you go to law school and you do a little trial ad and you get out of there and tell us, where's that first job young Jason lands out of law school?
I was clerking for a collection firm that did a lot of work for banks. So they had like 3,000 files that you have to do volume and collection work, but it's also litigation. So they have to sue somebody. Oftentimes, if they're defending the case, it ends up in a small little trial. So I got a lot of litigation experience going to that firm, even though the cases were small and you could try them. We'd like to do the bench trials. You could try them in a morning or an afternoon. But the most significant thing that happened to me was 30 days before, I became a lawyer. 30 days later, the lead litigator quit. And they handed me a file and said, you're going to try this federal bankruptcy case where you have to prove fraud in 30 days. So I tried a case in federal bankruptcy court 60 days in from being a lawyer. And I'll remember it to this day because it was opening day for the Tigers. And all my friends went to the Tiger game. And I tried this case and lost. Very hard to prove fraud. You have to prove intent. And driving home or driving back to the office, I was just mortified.
You should have been. You're a loser, but you recovered. You didn't let it.
But I get there, and then they tell me you were supposed to lose this. This was a dead loser. We knew you were going to lose. The client got their day in court, mission accomplished, and move on. But of course, I didn't realize. I thought I was going to win this case.
So Jason, you and I hadn't seen each other for a long time after high school and college, and we kind of reconnected or kind of ran into each other at an AAJ conference. I can't remember. I just remember seeing you there because we had some mutual friends like George Chulos and Claude Wiley out of San Francisco. And it was very rare to see a Michigan lawyer at the AAJ. I mean, there's maybe a few. I see Ben Johnson there. I see Brian McKean there.
Yeah. Same
Jules
people.
Holtzman, but there's very few. And I was always kind of surprised that more lawyers in Michigan didn't, go to these national programs. But what kind of inspired you to start attending AAJ and other, educational programs like that?
Well, after that first job, I was only there 8 months. And I was trying, I knew that I wanted to do some personal injury work. And I knew I would go on my own eventually. Well, they wanted me to do the work there. They assigned me the work that they had, and I was bringing in a
Wait a minute.
PI.
Wait a minute. You were working for them, drawing a paycheck, and they want to tell you what to do?
Right.
The nerve of that law firm. No wonder you had to get out of there. My God, audacity.
I was bringing in a few auto cases, and they really, I could tell they didn't want to have time for that, and I get it. So, I wasn't married. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities or bills. So I went on my own, not knowing any better, hung up my own shingle, and it was just me.
And that was it. Just to be clear, that was after 8 months of being a lawyer,
right?
Of doing litigation in bankruptcy. You thought you'd open your own firm and start, segue to personal injury.
Yeah,
do whatever you had to do to get some cash.
So yeah, back then I was taking appointments, criminal appointments, misdemeanors. And the joke was, if somebody said, what kind of lawyer are you? I'd say, well, what kind of lawyer do you need? And then here are 3 business cards. Call me with personal injury cases. That's what I do. And then I started to do auto accidents. Those are the most common, obviously. And after a few years, to get back to your question, I always realized that, to be a champion and to be good at something, you have to keep learning. And go find the knowledge, find mentors, go to seminars. And I saw those people, those really good lawyers that you just mentioned, were going to AAJ conferences. And as a young lawyer, that's expensive. You got to buy a plane ticket. You got to pay for the hotel. The conference is expensive. But I chose to commit to it because I knew that this was, at the time, this was the organization where plaintiff attorneys shared or taught, and I would build relationships. And I would get better. And they always had it at a different city or venue every year. So I would see other cities, Puerto Rico, I don't think I probably ever would have got to Vancouver. That's another one. So I committed, and I went to the national seminar every year for 15 years as a commitment to learning. And I still think that concept's important, and I try to use it also with my associates and my lawyers in my office to pay for them to go to these types of seminars, because I think that learning part is really, really important. So that's where it was at an AJ conference that I met you, and you're saying, hey, I got this thing called Trojan Horse. You got to come check it out.
Fucking great.
You got to do a workshop.
Best thing ever. Yes, I can imagine my enthusiasm that I still, I just use this, I just challenge Trial Lawyers University now. So that was right back. That was like in 2016. I remember you came to, I think it was Redondo Beach.
Yeah, it was.
Because I remember it was in the, I still remember the hotel. I still remember the whole thing perfectly, because that was a big conference, because some great lawyers there, like Spencer Lucas, he's a partner at Panache and Ravaputi. He's a great lawyer. He was there. So like something like that, I was like, wow, like the guy who had 8-figure verdicts was coming to my little workshop. I was always like, I felt pretty, honored and stuff. I don't know how it's weird to say that, but I still remember like the various different people at that one, because that was, I don't know what was special about that, but you were there too. And then, like some of my other friends from Detroit, like Vince Colella, has been to many of the programs and stuff. And so you came and you did Trojan Horse in 2016. That was a, kind of a precursor to the TLU skills boot camps that we run today. Actually, we're running one next week with David D. Robertus on employment law. I'm really stoked about it, because there's 10 employment lawyers bringing 10 cases and working with a guy who's just, in my opinion, not just the best employment lawyer in the country, but he's one of the very top lawyers in the country, because the guy's got 6 verdicts in a row that have either 8 or 9 digits in them on employment cases. That's just insane. For what? Humiliation, tension, stress, not lost legs, not paralysis, not the things that we normally consider big verdicts for. So, it was a precursor to all of that, and it was obviously very different than what we teach today. But what were your takeaways? I know it was a long time ago, 8 years ago, but what were your takeaways from that first Trojan Horse program?
Well, to your point, a workshop is, you can go to a seminar and sit there and take notes, but it's much different standing up on your 2 feet and actually doing. And I think there's a bunch of great phrases that say you learn more by doing than anything. And then I also think you learn from your losses. If you really hate to lose and you lose, there's a big learning moments usually with losses. But that seminar, I remember, really good lawyers, just really sharing and not holding back, and watching that, and how you've done TLU and all the lawyers that present at TLU. That's kind of my mindset when I talk, is you just got to give. And, whatever you want, ultimately, I believe in karma, will come back around if that's what you're into.
Yes, but that Trojan Horse program was my real first initiative on trying to, teach presentation skills, not just the theory of being a trial lawyer, but how to get up and more effectively tell the story. And I didn't really understand. I didn't have a chance to study all the great lawyers like I got to do during the pandemic, to really recognize what it was that, that secret sauce, whatever you want to call it. What's that it? And, during the pandemic, though, with the chance to study the great ones, what I realized that it's all about the connection with the jury. And, the Trojan Horse was the start of that, but I didn't really, like I said, it was very rudimentary compared to what we do today, because...
Oh, Dan, I remember. It was the first time anyone videotaped me, and I saw myself actually presenting and, doing an opening statement or whatever. And I learned I talk too fast, slow down, number one. And
we just had to have that conversation yesterday. And you're doing better. See that? Constant coach. Don't you worry, buddy. And it's a podcast, but the learning never stops here at TLU.
And I had, you call them Chucky hands. I call them alligator arms, that I would keep my hands really close. It looked artificial, it looked weird. And I need to, tell the story and use those hands and make sure there's, they all go together. So having someone videotape me and force me to look at it and look at it honestly, that was new. And that was the first time that I've ever done that, because I was forced to do it and I had to do it. And yeah, it sucked, but I'm better now because of it.
Yeah, well, it's like people always feel like when people sometimes critique or talk about the skills boot camp stuff, like, oh, this feels very unnatural and very very uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, of course it does. It's the first time you've done something. Just like it's unnatural for a baby to stand on its 2 feet instead of crawling, but we do it because learning new stuff and learning a new skill. Sometimes it's not going to be the most comfortable experience. And the people that can't handle a little discomfort, well, they tend to sit on their asses their whole careers and refer their cases to people to go try them if they ever, if they get that far. Besides, the Trojan Horse program, we were at Huntington Beach last year, and we got Huntington Beach coming up this year, June 4th through 7th, if you just want to do the bigger program. But if you want to do the Dark Arts Boot Camp, then you have to come in on May 31st through June 3rd. But what did you like best about your Huntington Beach experience in 2024?
That's a great boutique hotel. It's got its own, location right on the beach you look out to. We take over the whole hotel. I think you had food trucks there. There's always something great going on. Bands, karaoke, all these extra party fun things that help with the networking. But the truth is, I'm there for the great lawyers that are talking. And I like to go to, why do you go to so many of these? Well, my caseload changes every year. So depending on the cases I'm working on, I'll go to different things, and this different speakers at that different time, depending on the case I'm working, means something different. So I'm always getting something new. And I can go to the same TLU conference over and over again.
Well, because it's never the same TLU conference, because it's a different, like this year at Huntington Beach would be a lot, different varieties, presentations and skills and master classes. So it's always changing, and I'm just trying to work on making it a little bit better. You also did my skills boot camp about a year and a half ago here in Vegas. So, how would you, what were your big takeaways from that one?
Well, again, COVID just happened, and I hadn't tried a case in 2 years because of COVID, and I was about to try this big case. So I wanted to get the ring rust off of me, stand up and practice some of the things that I was going to be doing at trial. And even though I might not be able to do the opening statement, I think you actually allowed, hey, you're going to do the opening statement for the group, even though that's not what it's about. It's about presentation skills. But just standing up and going through the lessons or whatever you had us doing would be helpful and lend itself to trying the big case that I had lined up. And then I think you'd forced me, get your opening statement ready, Jason. I'm going to give you an audience, and we're going to film you. And it's just something you made me do. And again, it sucked, and I had to prepare, but my opening statement, I guarantee you, was better than if not doing it. So those were a couple takeaways.
Yeah, it's all about getting the reps, and it's like especially most people have never really been taught or coached on how to present. I mean, how to make appropriate eye contact with 12 people, how to train ourselves to speak more slowly, to pause intentionally and more frequently, to, move our hands effectively, to, utilize them as vehicles for connection with the jury, controlling our emotional state. You know what I mean? Some people get nervous and they say good morning and their face looks all serious, and it's nothing. Nobody says good morning like that. People say good morning and they have a warm face, and it's so critical to be just intentional, with everything we do in front of a jury, because trials are performance. And if you don't, lawyers that don't get that, say, oh, I'm just gonna be myself up there. It's like, good luck, buddy. Because yourself is usually a nervous, distracted mess for most human beings standing up in front of an audience under pressure. And that's why it's just,
I think, like you said, I could tell a joke or a story in a group at a party, but as soon as you stand up and you're in that atmosphere, it's just different, and people tense up and their hands get to be the alligator arms and they talk real fast just because it's the nature of public speaking. So yeah, right on.
What's the nature of pressure? That's what happens. Pressure speeds people up, and that's why it's so important to practice slowing down. Practice speaking 10% slower when you're training, so that in case when the pressure comes, you're speaking at a pace that your audience can comprehend and process what you're saying. I mean, that's, critical. And, and since you've done the program, we've evolved it a bit. So now it's actually 4 days. Actually, the DeRobertis one's 4.5 days, because the first half day I'm doing witness prep and direct examination, because I've read quite a few transcripts. I'm just, amazed at how much help people really need in just prepping their witnesses. Because if your witness is great during deposition, you're likely to get a good settlement offer. If your plaintiff is terrible, you're likely to get shit. And so that's where it all starts with preparation. But now that we do 4 days, there's ample time for people to actually work their cases, work their openings, work their crosses, while still working on, learning the fundamentals of presentation. So I'm pretty stoked about that aspect of it too, because that way people are actually bringing cases, applying these skills to cases. Like in March, we're doing a trucking boot camp with Joe Freed. And that's March 5th through 8th, where people are going to bring their trucking cases, and it's limited to just 10 people. So we have 2 groups of 5. So you get lots of reps, lots of videotaping, lots of coaching. And then in April 2nd through 5th, Satch Oliver is doing a boot camp here with us on, his deposition of trial philosophy. Then in May, Michael Hill's doing one on elder abuse. So it's like, I got these, I'm so psyched to have all these great lawyers coming out here. And, I got some other ones lined up with some trial consultants like Eric Oliver and Harry Plotkin, and, just helping people put their cases together and, get the reps on their feet. So pretty stoked about 2025 and what we got going on, because I'm not doing this. I'm not doing a fall conference. We're not doing Vegas or Caesar's Palace, because this year Dan Ambrose is going to the courtroom on a regular basis. And just last night, I spent a couple hours reading Brian Panish's cross-examination in this big medical malpractice case he's got going on, because him and I do a Zoom every day for about 15 minutes. So he kind of gives me the download on what he's doing to prepare. But I gave him my cross-examination of the defense medical expert, kind of what we teach to learn the fundamentals of cross. And I'm reading his cross yesterday, and the whole pages 9 through 13, I should send it to you. It's, Doctor, you're board certified. To become board certified requires advanced education. And this education, it takes place after medical school. But while you were in medical school, you did take classes. And one of those classes that you took was on how to conduct a proper medical evaluation. And so, like, verbatim, I'm like, this is great. And like reading Brian Panish's, like, if you read his cross-exam, you got to read it. I'm going to send you his deposition.
I've seen a lot of his stuff.
But like, he does not like the guy says something and he just bang, bang, bang. Because like it just bangs them. It's just the reading of it, because there's just there's so much to be learned. And obviously, as so many people say, and Satch Oliver's book says, depositions are trial. And you got to get good at depositions. So I was reading my nephew Harrison's one of his first depositions, because I was in Mexico with him. He's like, I'm finally on the record. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, we got a lot of work to do, son. Let's talk about how you phrased that question. So
Dan, I watched that you did an interview or webinar with Brian Panish about cross-examination, and he had an expert witness on the stand for like 3 hours, and you guys went through it. It's a great one. And you're right. He does not let go of it. He will stay on that issue and on that issue and on that issue, ad nauseum almost. So
no, the first 80 pages of this deposition were just like him, like jabbing this guy, because he said he was licensed in New York, but he hasn't been licensed there in 30 years. And he's like, that's misrepresentation. Is it proper for a board certified medical doctor to misrepresent to the public? And let's see, how long are you misrepresenting for 30 years? And then his objection, And then the way he dressed down the defense lawyer, he's like, look, I told you, there is no relevance objection when it comes to expert witnesses. So please learn what you're doing. And he moves on. Just like bitch slaps the guy. I mean, it was great, because the guy was like, he's like, I've told you this before, because the guy is so authoritative. But anyways, a lot to learn, Mr. Waechter, on all this stuff and all these.
I'm always learning.
That's the fun part, buddy. It doesn't get boring. Doesn't get boring just being a lawyer thing. It does not get boring. So you've been a lawyer now for a little longer than I have, because it took me a while to get through moral character back there in '94. What a surprise! So you got a little head start. Plus I went to night school. So now you've been at this probably a little over 30 years now. Yeah, so what would you say out of those 30 years? What's your what's that one case that or one regret that maybe sticks in your craw, or things you maybe wish you would have done differently? Now that you have the benefit of hindsight. And
I kind of said it a little bit, alluded to it. You learn from your losses. So, I've had a lot of success. I've done well at trial, but the one that keeps me up at night still is the big case, the big trial that I lost. I had $72,000 in it, and motorcyclist died. And looking back on it, I have a friend that was that I went to college with that became the youngest judge in Michigan. And talking to him, he says, you know what? The jury really gets it right 97% of the time. So that gives me some solace that this case was a loser. There was a hill, the motorcyclist was speeding and all those things, but I thought I could win this case. I tried to do it myself pretty much. I wanted to prove to the world, and my ego got in the way, that I wanted to win and show everybody that Jason Waechter could do it without pretty much any help. Sure, I have some support staff, but I did the whole trial myself, and it was really the wrong decision. I learned now that you need a team. You can't handle big cases going against huge firms and billion-dollar insurance companies. I got outspent. They did animations and reenactments and spent $250,000 on all these things. I thought my $72,000 was a lot. This is going back 15 years, but I'm still thinking about it, Dan, and I lost that case, but I learned from it, and without it, I wouldn't be where I am today, and maybe I wouldn't have won, the big case that we're here to talk about a little bit about.
Yep, I remember that case too, because I helped you a little bit on it.
You did.
Unfortunately, I was consulting on a contingency back then, and that didn't work out too well for me. Oh, buddy, you got to help your buddy out, man. I'm trying to make a living over here. I'm trying to rub some nickels together. But we're making progress, though. They're making progress. So talking about, I'd ask you what your proudest moment is, but I know what it is. It's the verdict you got. And so this verdict you got, because it took you, 30 years plus work of training and growing to get your 8-figure verdict. So what was this trial? What was this trial about?
Yeah, to your point, I have a friend that said, you're an overnight success, and we can go and see all the things we've done to lead up to this. I've had a $2 million verdict. I've had a lot of 6-figure verdicts. I'm not a newbie before this, but this is the biggest verdict, and it was all non-economic damages. So people are telling me this really is an amazing thing in Michigan. So what this case was about essentially was a woman is driving her car down the road, kind of a country, in a city near Grand Rapids, out in a rural area, 2-lane road. She is using her cell phone to check her glucose level. Those little white discs on the back of your tricep you see these diabetics have, using an app on her phone to check this. She goes left of center and hits the motorcyclist. A lot of broken bones, a lot of surgeries, and he ultimately lost his leg above the knee. So he was an amputee because of this. And
so you're motorcycle amputee. Now this case comes to you. So when this case comes to you, obviously you recognize the size of it. So when this big, one that obviously recognizes the size. So what do you do, as far as to set it up, because it was, as far as figuring out this is a big case. There's ain't a big case even with the damages without the insurance, right? So tell us about your process.
Okay, so funny thing happened with this case. The insurance company, an adjuster for the insurance company for the car, the driver, called me and said, hey, there's a $250,000 policy. I'll send you a release and a check. I said, whoa, hold on. I need to know more, this, that. Oh, it's her car. And, I ran the registration. I got the police report. Nothing on the police report shows anything but an individual. The registration is hers. And it looks like there's a 250 policy. But my gut's telling, trust your gut. After doing this a long time, my gut's telling me something. And it's a policy in my office. Huge damages like this, even if that's what they say, I'm filing suit. Because only when you file suit, you have subpoena power, and they have to answer under oath. So I said, no, I need to file suit on this. Well, guess what? It turns out she was working as a social worker for Catholic Charities of West Michigan. She was on the job when this happened, going between clients, and there ended up being $30 million worth of insurance.
That's more than 250, Jason. Now we got a big case. Okay. So
they tried to hoodwink me to settle this case for $250,000, suggesting that's all there was. I mean, is that shady or what?
I am surprised that an insurance company would behave like that in Michigan, of all places. I am shocked. Shocks the conscience.
The highlight of TLU for me was having the opportunity to network with attorneys from out of state.
TLU has been amazing. I'm so glad I came. It was one of the most inspiring events I've been to. Great networking, great food. It's been amazing. I can't wait for next year.
So you figure out you got this big insurance policy now. So tell me about the process of getting ready for this monster case for you.
Well, they wanted to dispute everything, huge law firm in Grand Rapids. And they wanted to just, make a mountain out of every molehill. The lady came left of center, and they want to say my guy's comparatively at fault. He didn't have a motorcycle endorsement. He tested positive for THC, marijuana. He was obese, 300 pounds. And they just wanted to use all these things to try to make us think our case was less valuable, and to make us think that he was somehow at fault, riding in the wrong part of the lane. I mean, she came over it, and, they were just doing everything to make you doubt your case and the value of it. And just at every step, we're like, no way, I'll have none of it. So yeah, I heard the best experts. I didn't take anything to chance, even though someone could look at this and say, I don't need an expert. She went left of center. I'll just use the police officer. No, I worked it up, learning from that loss. I ended up spending $210,000.
I was just going to ask you, see,
all the way through
3x your investment. About time you put the money, especially you put that kind of money up. $1 million makes you focus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Really makes you work. Especially it's not like HMR servicing money that you borrowed on a non-recourse. It's hard currency you had to earn. And, it makes you a little more connected to it, because every time a dollar comes in.
And they even said, here, we want to resolve this. We want to pay you. Don't file suit. Let's do an early facilitation. We're serious. I didn't believe that. I filed suit. Then they go to facilitation. They're not even at $1 million. And then they just played games. And then they go to settlement conference and finally say, here's a $3 million package. Look how much money you'll make, Jason. They literally said that. And then we're going to take $1 million, put it in the client's pocket, and they take another $1 million and do a structure. And look at how great his life is going to be. No, goodbye. You have a duty to tell your client. Thank you. I know my duties. And then it wasn't until the courtroom steps we came up for trial the first time, and they offered $5 million. And I didn't think, I heard these stories, the lawyers turned down $5 million. I never thought I would turn that down, but I did. And one reason was we could talk about big data is going to your seminar. I learned about big data, and I ran big data on this case. So there's an answer to your question. I did big data on this case that I've never done before, learned about it at TLU, and that doing big data told me the true value of this case, what 200 potential jurors thought the value of this case was, whether they believed having no motorcycle license had anything to do with this, whether smoking pot had anything to do with it afterwards, if that's, lowered the verdict, and all those things we were able to test. So big data was a very big thing I did to work this case up that I've never done before.
What else did you take away from TLU that you applied to this trial that you think helped you get to your result, other than the big data studies?
One of my favorite moments in this trial was my cross-examination of their expert witness. He was a vocational expert, and he was also a psychologist. So he could talk about the psychology of losing a leg. And he was an amputee, an above-the-knee amputee. So can you imagine? This is what the defense attorneys are thinking. We got an expert, and he doesn't have a leg either, and he'll tell the jury having a leg is not a big deal. I mean, this is what they've got to be thinking. So I think Roger Dodd, and then listening to a couple cross-examination videos or presentations, those 10 the 10 commandments of cross-examination, they're bullshit. Somebody wrote a paper and that's what people have been pointing to for years and years. And Roger Dodd saying, look, they're nice guidelines, but after you do this a while, you can ask the question that you don't know, you don't know the answer to. And then you can ask questions that doesn't matter what the answer is, and don't be afraid of that. So I grilled this guy and ultimately got him to admit. So I looked at the verdict form and I said, did Ricky suffer pain and suffering to date? Yes. Did he have anxiety, humiliation, mortification to date? Yes. And I did that with every single element of damages that it's on the verdict form to date. And then I redid it for he will suffer, and I read the 1A, for the rest of his life. Yes. He will suffer B, humiliation, mortification, for the rest of his life. Yes. So I had their expert witness agree to all of the damages from the date, the second of the accident, all the way until 40 years to the end of his life. So they had to put a dollar amount for every line to 40 years because their expert admitted it. So that was fantastic. And maybe I would have just stayed with those 10 commandments if I didn't hear Roger Dodd say, hey, it's okay. One thing I did, I said, how was your, to get a hotel here in Michigan, you're staying here in Grand Rapids? Yeah. Did you have to make special calls to get a special room so that you could have a handicap accessible shower? And I went through his process. I don't know what the answer is, but I went through his process of traveling to Michigan, being a above the knee amputee, and all the little things, what a pain in the ass it was for him to sit into the witness chair from Idaho, where he came from. And I went through that for, a good 10 minutes. And I think it was very effective. I wouldn't have done that. I don't know if I would have taken that flyer, without that coaching.
And let's talk about this trial a bit more. So this trial took place in Western Michigan, which is a pretty conservative place. And Michigan itself is not known for big verdicts. Occasionally you get an 8-figure verdict, but it's pretty rare that you get 8-figure verdicts in Michigan. But there was something unique about this case that I was very impressed with, and that is you had before you even started trial, you were able to negotiate a high-low. And so tell us about how that came about.
Sure. So Dan, to your point, in Michigan, we have no fault with motor vehicle accidents. So our client was entitled to unlimited medical expenses for the rest of his life. So that's great for him. And when I talked to Brian Panish,
not so great for the lawyer who can't blackboard future meds and past meds and all the stuff that drives the damages.
I was talking to Brian Panish. So a year before this, I was watching him present on a motorcycle amputation case at TLU.
No, because he did that on a bench trial in LA, because I was there for a lot of it. And he got like $23 million on a bench trial.
So I asked him a question, and then sure enough, an hour later, we're having a drink at a social event at TLU. And he says, where's your motorcycle case? And I said, it's in Michigan. He goes, oh, I'll never try a case in Michigan. I said, why not? He goes, you can't board meds. How do you, in California, you have these big medical plans, and that's how we get these 8-figure verdicts. Well, in Michigan, there's no medical plan because it's not part of our damages. So this verdict was 100% non-economic damages. There was a wage loss component, but I pulled it away because I didn't want those low numbers to anchor the other numbers. So that was a strategy I did. But to answer your question, I kept saying no. They were getting more serious with the offers, and they were offering. I said no to $3 million. We're at the courtroom steps the first time it's going to trial. I said no to $5 million, and then they approached me. I don't think it's a good idea for the plaintiff to approach the defense and ask for a high-low. I think it shows weakness and that you're afraid, you're going to lose the money you have in costs. So they approached me, and only then did I, what are we talking about here? And I negotiated. I knew what to negotiate based on big data, the big data we had. I knew that when the verdict from the big data was reduced to present value, on a good day, it'd be 12 million. So I negotiated the high at 13 million. And then I negotiated the highest low possible, which they said, well, we offered 5. You got to give us a lower low than 5. Okay, 4. So we had a high low agreement of 4 million to 13 million. So now, I was very confident with the case, but as soon as that high low agreement was in place, I feel great. And I'll take maybe some more risks or go out on a limb and say some things maybe I wouldn't say.
Because there's no appeal.
Right.
So you
And
can basically say and
part
do
of it.
whatever you want.
We couldn't even tell the judge that there was no appeal. They really wanted the judge to think that he could be, that they could appeal. So that was part of it, which was kind of weird. That was the first time. But a high-low agreement will buy yourself a trial, and I learned that young in my career. We had this case, and I agreed to a high-low. They were trying to protect their insured. And then as soon as the defense got the high-low, they were like, hey, we're trying the case. We're never making another offer. And you would probably know the judge in Oakland County, that she made us keep coming 3 times before she gave us a trial. She just figured the case would go away, but they wouldn't settle because they didn't have to. Their insured was protected, and a high-low agreement will buy yourself a trial. But in this case, we knew we were going to trial. They approached me. Again, they need to protect their insurers. And with a big case like this, there's levels of insurance. And I believe there was, after $15 million, it went to a different insurance company. And that insurance company was yelling at these lawyers to protect them and do a high-low agreement because it protected them. So they had an incentive to do it. It turned out it was great. No, all the stories you hear about this, usually all the lawyers that you have on, like Giorgio's, is it Georgie's case?
Giorgio.
Or most of them, the last sentence is, well, we're on appeal. Hopefully in a couple of years, we win and we get paid. So the good part of my story is we got a $27 million verdict. When it was reduced to present value, it was $13,800,000. I got a check for $13 million in 60 days.
That's a really good part of the story. But you're happy to know that Giorgio and his mom,
I know,
got resolved, and it was a confidential payment, but it was a big payment. It was
I saw him
confidentially a lot of money.
I saw him at Caesar's Palace at TLU, and we were happy to talk.
I'm sure he was smiling. People smile when they have money in their pocket. It's weird.
And I met him at your workshop, and so I knew a little bit about that case was happening. So it's nice to learn about it and hear about it, and then hear that result. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and that was his first jury trial and his mom's first trial in 10 years. And she did my boot camp twice, and she was in my class because she couldn't be in class with her son, so she was subjected to my coaching for 2 full boot camps. But they got the verdict, and she did Roger Dodd's cross-examination. She hired these Steve and Olivia to do this improv for a trial. She really did everything. She really worked so hard and put so much of her life. She put she put $250,000 of her own money and then borrowed $250,000. I mean, she really went onto the mat. So it was such a great thing for her because she's such a wonderful person. So it's so great when you see great people do great things, especially with years of effort, and overcome great obstacles. Because, I'm sure there's a lot of insecure moments in that case where they think about referring it out to somebody else instead of doing it themselves. Because that stuff happens, when you haven't been there before.
And so you have to practice in the deposition. You practice in motion hearings. You practice at the grocery store. That's why you have a family. You practice on them. You have to keep the skill up or it erodes. It's simple as that.
Somebody give us an overview of this case.
Or I call wowing it. And what I mean by wisdom of the wise is, why are we still right in spite of this fact?
These are just some of the clips when I was cross-examined 10 years ago, remember that?
About 11 o'clock at night, and he leaves this message. I got a brilliant idea. Every conversation he starts, I have a brilliant idea.
But welcome, everybody. We've got a good crowd here today.
Talking about the trial, what did you tell us about some of the things that you did to get ready for it? Did you do focus groups? Did you practice your voir dire? I know you had a trial consultant there, so tell us a little bit about that process.
I did. I went out to TLU to one of your boot camps to get the ring rust off.
Right.
That's one thing I did. I downloaded TLU on demand. And when the best thing that happened, the case got dismissed. I wanted to go to trial the first time, comes up for trial. You think you're ready, and we were, and then we get kicked for 60 days.
That's,
so I go, wow, I get to prepare.
That's always the people always, I was all ready and da, da, da. I'm like, dude, because I remember like when I tried a lot of criminal cases, and whenever they would continue it on the day of trial, I'm like, you're fucking dead now. Because now I'm prepared for today, yet everything now is just processing in my unconscious mind. And all I'm doing is thinking about that case for the next 30, 60 days, whatever, refining it, honing it, practicing it. I'm like, I'm going to murder you. Just like whenever I had to do like a retrial from a hung jury, I'm like, people are like, oh, now they know your story. I'm like, no, I know their story, and now I'm going to whack them. But anyways.
No, you're right. So that's exactly what happened is like I was prepared. Now I'm going to be 10 times prepared. So one thing I did was, all right, I'm going to work on rebuttal this week. And I downloaded 3 podcasts or 3 TLU videos on rebuttal that week. And then I would listen to them in my car and then make notes and work on my rebuttal that week. And then the next week it was I'll watch Brian Panish speed jury selection, and we had that in this case. In our case, the judge he did all the voir dire, and then he let 15 minutes for the lawyers. So watching and listening to Brian Panish do his talk about when you only have 10 minutes, these are the 8 questions you have to ask, and then you have to ask the 3 questions or whatever pertaining to your particular case. So that's one thing I did, and I did it for opening statement and cross-examination. And it was like sometimes I would re-listen to it, but it meant something different because it was for exactly this case. I did big data, which was huge for this case. I went with more of a team approach. I had a brand new associate. I let him do a couple family witnesses. And he was only allowed to spend 15 minutes. Quick, get the good stuff and get out. I had Sean Murphy of my office represent the wife in the loss of consortium claim. That's something we haven't talked about yet. So I wanted to make the loss of consortium claim really perceived as a separate claim that you had to put separate dollars on. So from the beginning, Sean was the lawyer for the wife on the pleadings. I was for the plaintiff victim. He was for the wife. So they had that perception of 2 separate lawyers. They are 2 separate claims. And when we tried the case, we did the same thing. So he put the wife on. He did another. He did another witness. He was able to do 10-minute opening and a 10-minute closing just based on that issue. After I got done doing my 45 minutes, we were able to share the opening and closing. So those are some things we did.
And in voir dire, so you had 20 minutes. So talk about the key issues you talked to, that.
So, right. So, Brian, if you look at, if you do that Brian Panish seminar, his speech,
right, so
he has 8 things that you have to ask. What do you think of compensation for personal injury matters? Do you think there's too many personal injury cases? Are people too fast to sue? You want to go over those 8?
Are there too many lawsuits? Are they frivolous?
Right.
Are jury awards too high?
Exactly.
People too ready to sue? The burden of proof in a criminal case versus a civil case.
That's right. You got it right there.
Dude, look at that, boy. I know my Brian Panish materials. Okay.
And then you have to go specific for your case. One thing I'm concerned, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, one thing I'm concerned about in this case is we're suing a charity. How do you feel about the fact that the employer is responsible for what their employee did? Because we all know that's where the money's coming from, right? Some people might say, I don't think it's fair that the employer has to pay millions of dollars because this lady was stupid and used her cell phone while driving. What do you think of motorcyclists? There's a motorcycle bias. He smoked pot before that, he smoked pot afterwards. Just some of those things that were really specific to our case. Loss of consortium. A lot of people think when you get married, it's for better or worse. We're going to be asking for compensation because their relationship has changed. How do you feel about that? So those were some of the nuanced ones in our case in particular, but I also use the Brian Panish 8 that we just went over.
Right. And Kurt Zahner did a real good presentation at the last Huntington Beach one on 15-minute voir dire, because they got real short voir dire time limits in Denver. So just, just a little pointer for people that, might have short time limits in voir dire. And on March 19th, we're actually doing a full case analysis on this verdict, where we're going to spend 3 hours and go through in detail every topic from, of course, obviously, talk about the big, the focus groups, the big data studies, talk about your motions in limine, the in-depth, every question, every set of questions you did in voir dire, walk through your opening statement with whatever visuals you use. So we see how you structured your opening, how you talked about damages or whatever the injuries were in opening, how you addressed the defenses in opening, and then talk about sequence of order of proof. Who'd you call first and why? Who'd you call next? What visuals you use with them? So you could really understand the plaintiff's case, but then also the opposite side. What did the defendant put up? Do you have video clips from deposition that you used, or whatever you use to undermine their case? And then finally, closing argument and rebuttal. How'd you, frame the money? And, did you make any adjustments based upon the fact that you had it high, low? I mean, you could take some why not take some liberties, right? And so stuff like that. And so that's going to be March 9th. You better be ready, because this is showtime, buddy. It's your first case analysis. So you earned your way. It's like you got that verdict, and some people, they went to the Super Bowl. I'm going to Disneyland. You got your verdict. I'm going to case analysis. I'm going to do a webinar. I'm coming to speak at TLU Huntington Beach. And if you can't make that, of course, you were talking about TLU On Demand. And so TLU On Demand, of course, has everything we've ever done for the last 3.5 years. So every webinar that we did during the pandemic, starting in March of 2020. So there's there's actually more than 400 webinars now. And, we collect the pleadings, transcripts, and PowerPoints for all these cases. So there's like a great, really it's like a library for trial. But then it's also an app for your phone, which is great. So you can learn anytime, anywhere.
I mentioned I hired a new attorney. And one way I train, you got to train them, right?
You got to train new attorneys. They don't come out of law school ready to really produce some great content, some great work product, and really be a valuable asset to your team. You have to train them.
And we know Amazing. Our time is the most valuable thing we have, and it's finite.
Especially you take so many freaking vacations. You really better learn how to manage your time.
I'm trying to give you a plug here, Dan, but it's true. So I make him download TLU On Demand. And if he's going to go do a 30B6 deposition, let's say, he is to go watch, Mark Kaz, who's, the authority on, they wrote the book on it, who's presented for 3 hours at TLU. He's to watch those 3 hours and then come talk to me about how to apply it to the specific case he's working on. So I use TLU. The best lawyers in the country are teaching my associate, and it's freeing me up. And then also he and I meet once a month to go over all his cases. And during that time, he's supposed to report to me. He's supposed to watch at least one video per week. And he has to report to me which one he watched and what he learned. So I'm using TLU On Demand to teach my associate.
No, that's great to hear, because I think it's such a, I think it's such a valuable resource. I try to really, make sure that every program we do is, of the high, is a great learning vehicle, whether, and then all the people speaking, and because it's not just the webinars too, but like such great presentations at the live conferences, which, I think the presentations are better because there's so many different tracks at once. I mean, trial lawyers are inherently competitive. I mean, those competitive beasts there is, right?
I use it because I can't get to all the speeches that I want to see at the seminar. So I use it because, I can't get to everything.
Right. And like Satch Oliver and Joe Fried spoke for 3 full days at TLU Vegas. I mean, that's a lot of great content from 2 really brilliant lawyers.
Speaking of the devil, just happen to have it right here.
Depositions are trial.
I bought it at TLU.
Right. I mean,
that's Satch Oliver's book.
Right. And I was watching stuff too, and it talks about cadence and, how you ask questions. I mean, everything matters so much. Like all the details matter, and they just take practice and repetition. And And just, and that's the exciting part. It's just the constant learning is the exciting part, because it doesn't ever get boring. It never gets boring. It never gets boring. That's the fun part, Jason. Where's your next trip to? Oh, you said where are you going now? Thailand?
I'm going to Thailand. I go to my wife's Thai, my current wife. I haven't met my third wife yet.
Your current wife.
It's a line. And my dad would say he's real brave when she's not in the room. But all right, joking aside, yeah, I've been to Thailand a few times. I go every other year. My wife goes every year. So it's the other year. So I'm going to Thailand in February.
Well, thank God you're not going to Thailand in June, so you won't be missing Huntington Beach. But you're going to be, teaching in Huntington Beach. So what is it you're going to be presenting on? Well,
as you know, I don't think we've said it yet. I'm known as the motorcycle lawyer.
No way. The motorcycle lawyer.
And that's why I have a motorcycle behind me in my office. My clients love it. So with motorcycle cases, one of the nuances I see is motorcycles will go down because of road defects for obvious reasons, whether it's through a road construction zone or just the regular road that is not kept up. So I've had a number of cases and I've been pretty successful. They're very nuanced. They're very different. And I don't think I don't think every personal injury lawyer has handled one. So I'm going to talk about road defect cases, whether you're suing the municipality, the county, the state, or a construction company.
Oh, I'm working on a road defect case with my buddy Mike Karp out of Wisconsin. He's a really great young lawyer. He's only like 33 and he's already got an 8-figure verdict, but he's way ahead of you. It took you like 30 years, only took him 4. But anyways, not to disparage your results here. But anyways, he's got this big case coming up in Northern California, I think in April, that he's doing with another buddy of mine, Bouzard. But we're going to do a couple focus groups here in Vegas on it because he did my boot camp too. So he's coming to Vegas and we're going to use Panish's courtroom to do a couple focus groups in March, I think March 11th and 12th. So, and it's a road defect case. So guess what? We'll be calling you, Waechter, for your insights because it's a pothole like 3 feet big that took the guy down and he's foobarred. So that'll be a good, insightful thing for you to be helpful. To be real helpful. So Mike Karp, keep that name in mind when he calls you. You'll know who he is. All right. So I think that I think that covers everything we had to talk about today, Jason, because we're ready to go now. Because I don't want to spoil it for all the people that are going to tune in March 19th about this verdict, a little precursor. Because I'm excited for it too. Because nothing makes me happier than see one of my friends, or even people that are not my friends, but somebody that's worked real hard on honing their skills, going to conferences, doing the reps, doing the workshops, and just constantly focused on learning, and it all comes together into a big verdict. And it's a life accomplishment, really, getting a big verdict like that.
Well, thanks, Dan. And I think that's right. I'm really the regular guy that just kept at it, always learning. I've had a lot of experience, but that's what you gain over years, and you got to go out and find the right mentors, the right materials, and you got to stand on your feet and practice and just keep getting better. So yeah, that's my story.
The right mentors. It's hard to find mentors these days. And that's kind of like when we started the webinars, it was kind of like, I was just getting everybody to mentor me, you know what I mean? Because because when people are always like, hey, thank you so much for, all you did at TLU has really helped me a lot. I'm like, you're welcome. But if I'm just honest with you, I'm student number one. Because, I mostly did it for myself. Like everything we do mostly for ourselves. I mean, there's collateral benefits to others, but I want to learn. You know what I mean? I want to become the great trial lawyer. I did all this because I was just trying to figure it out. And that's why this year, 2025, it's my year for the trial lawyer. Because now, plus it's going to be a great, because then I'm on everybody else's journey because I don't have any 8-figure verdicts. I didn't have a 7-figure verdict. I got one 6-figure verdict I never collected on a paternity suit, but that was about it. So I'm really looking forward to the process of really becoming a trial lawyer.
Well, Dan, you've done such a great job with TLU. You've come so far, always getting better, and it's such a great product. You have the best lawyers in the country in our field showing up time after time, and TLU on Demand is fantastic. So thanks for that, and congratulations. Thanks for having me today.
Oh yeah, but Jason, we're not done yet here, buddy. So how do how do people get a hold of you, Jason? They might have a question about in Michigan, or, a motorcycle question, and you're the motorcycle lawyer, so don't do false advertising. You better be able to help people if they got the motorcycle questions.
Easy website to remember, themotorcyclelawyer.com. And that'll have all my information. But I'm always give my cell phone out. I'm not afraid to give my cell phone out, 248-417-8371. Call me about anything.
Who would call you that didn't actually have a question? Although you are, I can see, you probably get some stalkers of, both genders because you're such a handsome fella. But I don't think
that when you speak, when I speak, I always give my cell phone, and some people call, and I'm not afraid to help. I'll help anybody that calls. I think it's part of our duty to give back. So people have helped me along the way. Happy to help anybody.
I would agree. And if anybody, the TLU on demand though. So if you shoot me an email at Dan@Trial Lawyers University, or text me at 248-808-3130, or call me, I will be happy to give you a month complimentary access to TLU on demand. So you can kind of try it out and see if it's something you're going to use, something that's valuable for you. And if it is, then you can subscribe. And if it's not, just cancel it. Won't hurt my feelings, because, I don't want people to pay for stuff they don't use, because that's not a good value. I hate paying for shit I don't use. But
that's a good idea. I'll add my email address as well, jason@themotorcyclelawyer.com.
The Motorcycle Lawyer. Okay, Mr. Motorcycle Lawyer. Good hanging out with you, seeing you. Don't freeze your ass off there in Michigan. And let's see, I'll be seeing you before March 19th, because we got to do a little prep session, because you got to make sure your debut on the TLU webinars is a stellar moment in your career. So that way, next year, somebody says, Jason, what's the thing you're most proud of in your career? And you can say, I presented on TLU webinar. That's what you're going to say. All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Have a great day. You got it.
Take care.
Ready to train with the Titans and set records with your verdicts? Register for our live conferences and boot camps at triallawyersuniversity.com. Start getting your reps in before the big event by going to tluondemand.com to gain instant access to live lectures, case analysis, and skills training videos from the trial lawyer champions you love and respect, as well as pleadings, transcripts, PowerPoints, and notes for a roadmap to victory. Join the group that continues to get extraordinary results. Trial Lawyers University, produced and powered by LawPods.